Meet the new builder. In the new age of rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty. They're in labs, lofts, and war rooms, launching scrappy startups and reinventing big business. They see what doesn't exist, and they make it exist. They know the question isn't if, but when. They know the freedom to fail is the freedom to build, and they don't freak out when they run into a problem. These are the new builders, and we're the cloud that's obsessed with turning their dreams into realities. With the most capabilities, the most innovation, the most customers, and the most experience. We're the cloud that breaks down barriers. When others say no, we let builders say yes. Because we believe everything gets better when you let nothing stand in the builder's way. Amazon Web Services. Build on.
Hello, and welcome to the second day one of AWS Summit in Berlin. Hope you enjoyed the video, and welcome to this talk about the 7 habits of highly successful builders, a title that I have shamelessly stolen from a very popular book here. My name is Konstantin Gonzalez. I am a principal solutions architect with Amazon Web Services in Munich. I've been with AWS since 2012, and I'm super excited to see so many people, so many customers, so many builders in this room joining us for this event. So what are you going to get out of this session? You may have noticed that at AWS we have started to talk about builders. So I wanted to give you an insight into what we mean by being a builder at AWS and why we think this is such a powerful concept. There's going to be some best practices for you that you can adopt in your own professional life. And it turns out that they also border into career advice. So it could help you throughout your career across many companies, what we have learned at Amazon by becoming builders ourselves. It will also help you run or create or build better digital apps, since digitization is one of the hot topics right now. And hopefully you will also get some food for thought as I share with you some customer examples of our building customers. So let's start with the buzzword of the day, which is digitization. There is no management magazine that doesn't mention digitization in one way or other. And I always ask my customers, so what do you think digitization really means? And everybody has a different definition here. And as a computer science, I like to bring it down to very simple principles. So to me, digitization means creating value out of data. It's that simple. If you look at any digital business model, it always starts with the data. And then your business model is to create value out of that data, and then you monetize that data, you make money with that data, you create that value that you can sell out of that data, and that is what digitization is about. It's running your business in a digital way based on data. So obviously, the value bit is what you want to get out of the whole thing, and the data bit is what you have and what you're starting with. Now, the super obvious stuff here is you need to build the arrow in the middle. Now I'm pointing out something that may be super obvious to you, but when I talk to large customers, or even to smaller customers, to customers of any size who are coming out of the traditional world of IT, they struggle with the concept of creating their own stuff because they are coming out of 15 years of outsourcing, 15 years of making somebody else build their digital IT, whatever kind of stuff. And now they find out, wait a minute, do I need to do this on my own? Why can I not outsource this building stuff to somebody else to do it for me? Now, if you have been in the old IT world, I've started working in IT in 1998, so I've been seeing like 20 years of IT. And then you notice a lot of typical things like waterfall processes, project management, outsourcing, vendor management, RFIs, RFPs, meetings, change requests, process, whatever. Notice that none of these activities actually has anything to do with building. This is all about getting somebody else to build. This is all about avoiding the building stage here. So you may want to ask, why is that so? And I actually found an old article from exactly 15 years ago in which somebody said, IT doesn't matter. Now, if you've been here for a while, you may have witnessed the .com phase where after the year 2000, everybody lost interest in .coms and in the internet because it was a big hype, that sort of big bubble that exploded, and then everybody went back. And so this article here, which is actually the Harvard Business Review, a very popular magazine, and this person said, okay, IT doesn't matter, this is something you need to outsource. And obviously, he was not a builder. I later found out he is not even an IT person. He is an author. I think the intentions were right, but the means by which we achieve a more efficient IT have changed over time. So today, in the new IT, we see things like agile teams, working in sprints, doing more insourcing, customers and companies hiring developers that are using API-driven services or building API-driven services with a pay-per-use, small teams, automation code, all of this great stuff you're learning about here. And that is about building in a way here. So at AWS, we're all about building tools for builders. And this is what we do at AWS. We provide you with building blocks, right? Now, it sounds like a pun, and it is super obvious. Of course, we give you building blocks. But the important distinction here is these are building blocks, not a platform or not an abstraction layer or not anything that goes in the way of you building something. And the difference here is you can mix and match those building blocks together and you can rebuild something very similarly to a Lego set where you experiment a little bit and you put a wheel here and the wing there and it doesn't quite work, so you put it somewhere else. So you're building constantly. And this is different from the old world of IT where we had to deal with enterprise service buses and platforms and abstraction layers where you had to build this huge platform and then you could start build something, but you were kind of hooked into that platform. And if you didn't like the way that platform stored something or measured something or processed something, then you were still stuck with that. In this case, using a building block approach, you can exchange the database for a better one. You can exchange the message queue for a different one. You can exchange the way you do stuff. You can rebuild everything on the spot. So coming back to the initial question, what is a builder? I tried to find a good definition, being the good computer science person that I'm trying to be. And I found this in the literature, actually, a quote from Robert Heinlein. If you've gone to any science fiction movie of the 80s, you probably ran into one of his stories. He's a very famous science fiction writer. And he wrote down one day, a human being should be able to change a diaper, done that, plan an invasion, well, working on that, butcher a hog, well, sounds kind of icky. Con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, and die gallantly. That is what Robert is expecting from a competent person. And at the end, he writes, specialization is for insects. Now think about this. Are you a specialist? Because if you are a specialist in a very narrow thing, that is a very nice thing to be outsourced later to somebody who can do it cheaper. So in a way, the insects that Robert describes here are the very narrowly specialized people today that may be replaced, to be honest, by people who can do the same stuff cheaper, more efficiently, or even by automation. So how do we deal with that? So at Amazon, we like to talk about the Amazon leadership principles, which is something you can look up. And this is how we help our employees become builders. And this is also something that we use in our hiring process to make sure that we hire builders. And it doesn't talk about pitching manure, it doesn't talk about changing diapers, but it does talk a lot about the mentality that we are looking for as we build stuff. So out of the leadership principles, I've picked 7 of these and want to show you how they relate to building new stuff and how you can take advantage of these leadership principles for your own. And if there's one thing that I want you to leave with this room, so just one thing that you remember out of this talk, it would be that builders learn and are curious. And that is the prime thing. This is the only thing that helped me throughout my whole 20-plus year of career be always at the forefront, be doing something interesting and becoming successful, whatever success means here. And here's an example of another person who always learns and is always curious. And I just finished this book here, by a guy called Bruce Dickinson. Who knows Bruce Dickinson? Who has ever met him? So, okay. Any Iron Maiden fans here? So Bruce Dickinson is best known as the lead singer of Iron Maiden. So he's a rock star, right? And very little people know that he's actually a world-class sword fencing champion. He's an Olympic-class sword fencing champion. In between gigs on stage, he has been finding the local club of whatever the city was that Iron Maiden was playing and trying to kill time by sword fencing. And he was actually part of the UK sword fencing Olympic team. How cool is that? And also, since obviously he still had more time than that, he actually became a pilot. He is a pilot as well. He is a fully licensed commercial pilot with licenses across Europe and the United States, and he has a more than 10-year-long career as a commercial pilot. So if you've been flying around the world for the last 15 or so years, there is a more than zero chance that Bruce Dickinson was your pilot. And all in between singing for Iron Maiden, doing all that stuff. And just because that wasn't enough to satisfy his curiosity, he also did his own beer. So he teamed up with a brewery, and he worked with the brewmaster and created his own beer that he called Trooper, which is part of the Iron Maiden fan base here. So this is a guy who clearly knows how to learn and how to be curious, and that's why he named his autobiography, "What Does This Button Do?" which is a nice way of expressing curiosity. What does this button do again? Oh, it starts an airplane. Cool, let's do that. So why is it important to learn and be curious all the time? It opens up new opportunities. Even if you're learning something that has nothing to do with IT, you will find that it has some repercussions back to your day job where you can find something usefulness no matter what is the exotic thing you're learning. In the case of Bruce Dickinson, he used his piloting skills to bring his band all over the world as part of the Iron Maiden World Tour a couple of years ago. Learning new stuff helps you find better ways to solve problems because the world doesn't stand still. New solutions become available and they may not be in your own area of expertise. So it's a good idea to check out other people's areas of expertise and finding new ways, better ways to solve the same thing. And NoSQL is a better way of solving many database problems that we know we didn't have 20 years ago. It helps you shed light on blind spots. When you're an expert at something, you develop a blindness to stuff that happens around you that is not directly related to your own expertise. And by learning and being curious, you become aware of the stuff that you don't know, and then you get a choice about, okay, what do you want to learn next here? Because if you keep those blind spots, you may miss something that is going to be the next big thing next year that can help you build a better career. So in my case, I used to be an expert in a specific operating system, which I still believe is the greatest operating system in the world, but sadly today it's not relevant anymore. I used to be an expert in a very specific, really cool CPU architecture that is not x86, which is not relevant today in the world, but the things I learned there I could map over and bring over to my current day-to-day job as a solutions architect. And by learning more about the stuff that matters today, by running my first cloud camp in Munich in 2009, I got rid of my blind spots and I thought, oh, this cloud thing could be interesting. Let's do more with that. So it fuels your personal growth. By learning something every day, by being curious, you can grow personally, and it makes your job a lot more interesting. So how do you do that? How can you learn to learn and be curious? Dedicate some time for that. Don't wait until your manager goes down and to you and says, hey, Steve, why don't you learn something new or something? Not everybody has a manager like that. I do, but it may not be the rule. And frankly, you have to do it on your own. You have to separate yourself from the rest of your colleagues because otherwise you're going to be swamped down. You know the feeling, right? You open up your laptop and you bring up your mail client and suddenly the morning is over and the afternoon is already in full flight just because you opened your email. So try to avoid that. Do it the first thing in the morning. So people sometimes wonder why I only come at 10 o'clock in the morning into the office. They think I sleep late. The reality is I hang out at a coffee shop like this one, trying to learn something new before I enter the office, and then the whole flurry of daily madness can come over me because I already did my learning for that day. And that is the thing, so you should learn and be curious consistently. Try to work it into your daily routine, and not try to make up for it at the end of the month. Oh my God, I didn't do my DNA. I need to cross this off, so let's learn something quick and then get on. No, try to make it a habit for every day. And try to learn something that is outside your comfort zone, something that you haven't done before. It feels bad at the beginning, of course, because we're all very stupid as we learn something new. We feel very stupid. But as you learn something outside your comfort zone, you get a very different perspective on what you're doing, and that will help you a lot. It could be a new language, a new coding framework, a new activity, playing a musical instrument, a new anything. Or you could visit a random meeting. Just invite yourself to some meeting that you've never been. If you're in engineering, go to a sales meeting. If you're in sales, go to the SA or engineering meeting or developer meeting or something like that. Go visit a random meetup or something like that. The point here is you want to increase entropy in your life. You want to bring in random impulses because the randomness will open up the perspectives for you and give you new opportunities and new possibilities here. And that will give you inspirations for something nicer, cooler, more interesting, or more profitable, or whatever your success metric is in the future. So what do you do after learning so much stuff and being so curious? Well, of course, we like to invent and simplify. And the invention bit is an interesting thing here. For instance, in Germany, we like to invent a lot, right? This is the country where a lot of the key inventions have been done, like the diesel engine or like electricity and other, like the Siemensens of the world who invented better ways of creating electricity. But invention is not only about creating the cool stuff that is the next best thing here, it's also about doing a lot of experiments, and if those experiments fail, not being fired for it, right? Not having any negative repercussions for those failed experiments. And that is something that Andy Jassy likes to remind ourselves. It is important to run as many experiments as possible, and we know that you're not going to get it right the first time, so be prepared to run all these experiments, and if it fails, it's fine. You'll just learn something and then move on. This is something that I find my German customers are struggling especially with in the culture where failure is not seen as a positive thing. The colleagues from the US, they have a much better time with that because it's a cultural thing. So try to inject a little bit more failure tolerance culture into your environment, into your team, or into your company to make this happen. And inventing something doesn't have to be complicated. So here's a nice example here. So if you're like me, you travel a little bit, and then you have one of these luggage thingies with the wheels attached. And it turns out that the guy who invented, the guy who came up with the idea of putting wheels on a piece of luggage did that in 1970. This is the year that patent got filed. But it turns out that commercial aviation has been around since 1909. So think about 61 years of people hauling large pieces of luggage without those comfortable wheels. Why did it take so much time to literally attach the mankind's first invention ever to its most useful destination, which is a heavy piece of luggage? It took us 61 freaking years to do that. And it's so simple. I mean, in retrospect, everybody would say, that's so simple, why didn't they? It turns out that simplicity is hard. It is simple afterwards, but before that, it seems to be 61 years hard, right? So it isn't always obvious. So try to find non-obvious, simple ways of inventing and simplifying. It doesn't have to be complex. Sometimes the simple solution is really the best one. So here's an example of BMW. You have seen them yesterday on stage. This happens to be my customer. And on reInvent 2015, you can look up the video on our webpage. They are explaining how they use their cars as sensors to collect data to augment their map databases, which is a very simple idea. We have those cars sitting there already. Those cars are already taking pictures of road signs. So why don't we just hook them up to our mapping system and try to use that to get better mapping data? Very simple idea. Took them just a couple of weeks to set up, and boom, you have a new cool digital application that brings you on top of stage of reInvent. So sometimes the simple ideas are the best ones. But here's something you should not invent. And that means the wheel. It means you shouldn't try to reinvent something that is already there, that is already running at scale, that's already nicely operated, that you can already use. And of course, this again sounds obvious, but I have so many customers who are right now deep down scratching their heads about running their own self-managed NoSQL database. No, we're not going to use DynamoDB. This is proprietary. I'm going to build my own cluster. I'm going to hire this world-class team of engineers who's going to run my NoSQL cluster. And they're going to do patching, and they're going to do all this stuff so that I can be vendor neutral and all that stuff. It is a nice hobby, but it doesn't really help you at the business level. It doesn't help you invent something. So check out those building blocks. See if they can help you get rid of undifferentiated heavy lifting, as we call it. And instead, try to invent and simplify around your own customers. And this is why we have customer obsession as the first leadership principle in our list here. And at Amazon, for instance, when we try to create a new service or a new product, we always start with the customer with a simple mechanism that we call the working backwards process, which means the product manager has to write a press release first, before writing any line of code. And that press release needs to reflect the view of the customer of the proposed product. And the reason we do that is if you read through the press release, and if you write that press release, you're forced to express what is the value of my new product? What does it do for customers? How is this improving customer lives? How is the customer going to use it? How are they going to pay it? What are the potential problems? We also write an FAQ just to answer all of the potential questions. That FAQ also contains those internal questions that are hard to answer, like, why do we need another database? There are already so many on the market. Why do we need another X-Tier? Is this better than the competitor product? And if so, how is that better? And why would customers use it? All of these hard questions get answered before we build. And the reason here is it forces our building process to be truly customer-centric, instead of coming up with something out of the ivory tower and then the sales rep asks, hey, do you have a problem for my solution? I have something to sell to you. We don't want that to happen. We want it the other way around. We want to come out with services and products that customers really need. And if you look at our roadmap, we don't have a roadmap. Our roadmap is about 12 months, 6 to 12 months. That's about the longest period we can disclose to customers in terms of a roadmap discussion, because we honestly don't know what's going to happen after that. We simply listen to our customers in this fashion, and then we build what the customer needs. And it's a much safer route down to success if you are really closely aligned with your customer and you ask them all the time, what do you need? How does it feel? Is this good? Or how can we be better? And to do that, as builders, we like to dive deep. So here's a nice dive deep picture here. And of course, what I mean here is a data lake. It is a bit prettier than the data lakes that you may be building. But the point here is the reason why data lakes are so popular today is that customers are now trying to dive deep into their existing data to identify those opportunities for creating value and then creating something valuable, a new service, a new product out of that. But that's just one side of the equation. Another way you can dive deep is by diving deep into your monitoring data. As you build a new service, make sure you always know what your service is doing. Try to come up with KPIs that reflect your service value. And that means try to find those KPIs your customers care about. Avoid vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are metrics that look good because they go up, but they really don't tell you anything. I run a blog as a personal side project, and I can tell you all about, hey, I have so many hits on my blog, but it doesn't tell me whether my readers are really liking my content, whether they're really reading something, or whether they just happen to come to my blog by accident and then they go away. So try to come up with the right metrics, the right KPIs that truly tell you if your customer is happy, if your service is operating nicely. And sometimes your service may not operate nicely, and it may look like this. So fires do happen, of course. So let's remind ourselves, if something fails, it's not to find an excuse to fire somebody. Hey, you're responsible. You're fired because you caused this fire here. It doesn't work. Instead, at Amazon, we write so-called cause of error reports. So when something goes wrong at Amazon, we find one of the responsible engineers and ask them, her or him, to write a cause of error report. It is a brief, no blame, that's the important part here, description of what went wrong. And the assumption here is, of course, everybody did whatever they could with all their knowledge at the time to make sure the system works well. And even despite that, it went wrong. And yes, it went wrong, but everybody tried their best to do that. So it's not about finding somebody to blame. It's about understanding what happened. It's about understanding all of these points that are part of our cause of error reports, so that at the end you know what to do to avoid these kinds of failures in the future. So we write so many cause of error reports, even if the failure is not that big, because we know that this helps us improve over time, all the time. It is a mechanism for us to become better with every iteration of any kind of failure. So as you build your data lake, this is just the beginning. It is the beginning of a long series of dive deep exercises that will help you understand your data better, help you find new ways of creating value for your customer. And part of that data lake should be monitoring data from all of your systems, because you can use that data to identify the health of your system, whether your product is being used and how nicely your customers like your product, all that stuff. Try to identify the right KPIs and not just vanity metrics. And one mechanism we use to dive deep is the 5 why technique that we borrowed from Toyota and the lean manufacturing movement. So if you want to get to the core of a problem, ask, why did this problem happen? And you will probably get some answer. So why did the server fail? Well, a hard disk broke. Oh, that's interesting. So why did the hard disk break? Well, hard disks break after a couple of years. That's the normal stuff in hard disk lives. There's a probability distribution, yada, yada. So if we know that hard disks break, why didn't we have a spare hard disk? Why didn't we mirror the file system? Well, the team thought it wasn't important enough. And well, now I'm sitting here in the middle of this fire, and you tell me this wasn't important enough. So by asking why further down the road, you will eventually identify the root cause of whatever went wrong. And then you know how to fix it, because in this case, it's just adding a mirroring to your hard disk, or it could be adding a second database, or it could be adding a circuit breaker to your microservice architecture. And do those cause of error reports, because that is really documented learning as an organization. It is not enough to learn and be curious on your own and then keep everything in your brain. You externalize those lessons learned by writing those cause of error reports. But don't get too hung up on data. People think that Amazon is a data-driven company and that for everything we do, we have a big data lake and there is the data and it tells us to do that, and we're all robots that are completely data controlled. That's not true. Because we always think about the customer first, and that means if the customer tells us this is wrong, but the data tells us everything's fine, then it's our fault because we're not collecting the right data. So listen to what your people are telling you, listen to what your team, listen to your customers, and if what your customer tells you and what the data tells you, if they disagree, then it's the data. Then you're not collecting the right amount of data, the right kind of data. Then try to figure out a better way of collecting data so that you are able to measure what your customer is seeing. And now we are circling in on the core of being a builder, because a builder really is an owner. If you build something, it's your baby. You own it. You want to make sure that baby works, that it grows, that it performs, that it is the best baby in the world, the best service in the world, the best product, so, because you own it. Now, if we look at traditional organizations, so who owns anything here? I mean, we have business units. They want something from IT. And then we have finance people who are financing the project, and they give you a budget. And we have marketing, who is doing commercials or events like these. And we have sales, who wants to sell your product. And we're working with suppliers, and we are giving everything to a system integrator and to a consultant. I mean, these are all great people, but there is no clear owner. And that's why we see so many finger-pointing exercises happening when the project goes down. Oh, it's your fault. You didn't do this in IT. But it works on my laptop. It's your fault. And all that stuff here, right? So at Amazon, we changed the concept, turned it over on its head. So we're using 2 pizza teams. Teams that you can feed with 2 pizzas, American pizzas. That means it's about 6 to 8 persons per team. But the point here is the 2 pizza teams owns the full product. It's their responsibility to come up with the right idea, write the business plan, do the working backwards exercise, develop the product or the service, run the service, and handle all the escalations when something goes wrong here. So instead of project managers that only stay with the project for a year and then they go away to manage some other project, and then the project slowly dies because there's no project manager, we have product managers. And these are very different people. Because product managers are owners. They own the product, they breathe the product, they go out and collect customer feedback, they talk to the engineering team, they prioritize the roadmap, they figure out what's right, they motivate the engineering team to stay up that extra night and handle those escalation calls at the morning, because they are truly owners. And we are very happy to see that our customers are starting to adopt this mentality. So this is Christian Deger. He's on stage at reInvent last year together with myself. Back then, he worked at AutoScout or at Scout24. Are there any Scout24 people here in the audience? Yeah, kudos, thank you. And so he explained how the migration of AutoScout went along from all of the traditional stuff to having autonomous teams organized around business capabilities. And that is an important principle that we see being adopted by many customers as they become builders. And you can check out the full talk on YouTube here. So if you own your product, if it's your baby, you really care about that product. And that means that you will develop a sense of highest standards. You don't want to be the owner of an ugly baby, right? You want to be the owner of the best baby of the world, the best product, the best service. Your service has to be the best around there. You want to make sure that it is really world-class. And it happens that Jeff Bezos, in his latest Amazon investor report or Amazon customer letter, he wrote a story about insisting on higher standards. And he told the story of this colleague of Jeff who wanted to learn how to do a handstand. And he thought, OK, I can do a handstand. I just need a coach, and then it's a week, and then I can do handstands, right? And this person figured out it's not that easy. It really takes you 6 months to get from 0 to a handstand. And I'm talking about like Pinterest quality or Unsplash quality handstands, not just falling in a controlled manner. To do a real handstand, you really have to do a lot of training. You really need to put in a lot of detail. You need to look at all the details. You need to get everything right at the same time. But it's really worth the effort. So Jeff writes in his shareholder letter that building a culture of high standards, of course, helps you build better products and services. That's obvious. A little bit less obvious is it also helps with recruiting and retention. And that's a big theme with my customers. They're all trying to hire great people, great developers, great builders that help them with their next project. And it's hard to hire good people. How do you attract the best people, the best developers? By showing them that you care about high standards, that you're a high-quality environment. It's not about having a ping pong table in the basement. Hey, we have ping pong tables, and we have free pizza or whatever. No, it's about having a high-quality environment where high-quality developers can really realize something great, something big, something high quality, insisting on highest standards here. And the other thing is, there is only so much you can write down in a specification document. And this is one of the reasons why outsourcing in the past has been so painful. Because outsourcing people, they have written down all of the requirements, and they ship those requirements to their favorite outsourcing country of the day. And then they got something back that was ticking all of the boxes, and it still didn't work. Why? Because there are so many details that you cannot foresee in the beginning that require human effort, that require creativity to find and see, that require attention to detail to identify. Wait a minute, we need to really make sure that this looks good, otherwise it's going to suck and customers are going to go away. But it's not in the specification. We are still going to make it look good, otherwise we won't have any customers. So all these discussions take place with people who insist on high standards, and they help you protect the invisible bits of your product and service. And that's why it's important to insist on high standards and to look out for that. And one way of us at Amazon Web Services to insist on high standards is the AWS Well-Architected program. So here's a program that helps our customers check all the boxes, but it's more than just a checklist. It's also a set of guidelines that can help you understand what are good standards for a cloud application that runs highly available, with high security, with good cost efficiency, with a good operational mechanism, and that truly does your job well. So check out the well-architected web page, and that can help you create better solutions. So principle number 7 is really the sum of all the other principles, because if you really do all of the above, you will end up having really good results. And we are starting to see customers issuing press releases about how they turned around their company from a non-profitable, struggling company to a profitable company with more success as a result of adopting the cloud. I'm not trying to take all the credit here, but it was a huge part of their turnaround strategy to be more agile, be lean, manage their costs better, having access to great building blocks, and learn to rebuild their company and becoming more successful here, and delivering better results, even financially. So if you take all of these things together, the end result is going to be to deliver good results. And to sum it up, building is really about having skin in the game, having the responsibility for your project, and not outsourcing it away to some vendor that happens to be the lowest bidder. So insisting on high standards, ownership, dive deep, customer obsession, the blood, sweat, and tears you're bringing into your project are really the skin in the game that you're bringing in here. And there is an interesting book by a well-known trader and author, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, that goes all around why skin in the game is important to getting anything done in this world, and why you should look out for, is this guy really having skin in the game, or is he just here because he needs to fill the time between 9 and 5 just to make his quota, and everything else is really not his job here, right? You want to have people in your team that really live and breathe and are part of your service, and you recognize them by looking for these leadership principles here. And here's a little bonus. Building is also about earning trust. So my day-to-day job is a solutions architect. When I visit customers, I talk about stuff that I have done. I run my own websites. I run them in production. I programmed the form backend for my wife's website. She works as a freelancer. I know what I'm doing when I'm talking about Lambda and monitoring. And if something breaks for my wife's website, of course I'm going to know very quickly. So I better have my monitoring right so I can know before my wife knows and fix it quickly. So if you are a builder, and if you've gone through that, if you have the scars in your, hopefully not your face, but you have the scar tissue of having worked through all those fires and stuff exploding in front of you and fixing it and making it work and all of this stuff that we talked about, you're going to earn a lot of trust with your management. You're going to earn a lot of trust with your own customers, with your team. They're going to look differently at you. And I don't know about you, but who has sat in a presentation with some guy showing PowerPoint slides where you could instantly feel this guy doesn't know what he's talking about? I hope you're not having the same feeling with me, but that is exactly the distinction between somebody who just knows their slides really well and somebody who has really done it. So as a builder, you earn trust, because the difference between theory and practice is like this, right? In theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. But if you're a builder, you know there is. So with that, thank you very much for coming. I hope this was some food for thought for you, and I hope you are getting something out of it for your own project and maybe your own career. Thank you.